John McCain is on message again. That's good news for his struggling campaign. The bad news for his struggling campaign? He's managed to stay on that message now for a little over 9 hours. The message is a good one. John McCain is not President Bush. John McCain is, in fact, campaigning against President Bush. It's not rocket science. It's how you win the election to succeed the least popular president in American history. McCain unveiled the say no to Bush, say yes to me line at the final presidential debate earlier this month. He reiterated it last week during an interview with the Washington Times, and then he repeated a variation of it today in Cleveland.
We both disagree with President Bush on economic policy. The difference is that he thinks taxes have been too low, and I think that spending has been too high.
It may have taken the McCain campaign a few months and a few dozen different messages to get here, but they're here. If you don't like President Bush, vote for me, John McCain. It's probably the best possible message for John McCain's campaign. Good for him for figuring that out. Bad for him, he keeps undermining it. Here he was just yesterday on Meet the Press.
Do we share a common philosophy of the Republican Party? Of course.
Except for those big differences between you, the real Republican, and Bush, the pretender, right? What happened to distancing yourself from President Bush? Therein lies the underlying problem for the McCain campaign. Message discipline. Obama's a celebrity. No, he's a terrorist. No, he's a socialist. The fundamentals of the economy are strong. No, we're in a crisis. Suspend the campaign. Don't bail out AIG. Bail out AIG. Bail out Wall Street. Do you believe this awful Wall Street bailout? We're now seeing the results of the message careening in the McCain campaign. First, no message has stuck. And second, Republicans think they're going to lose, and so they are blaming each other. The knives are out. Anonymous GOP officials are telling reporters things like, quote, "The lack of discipline and ability to draft and stick to a coherent message is unreal." And there's no communication. It drives you crazy. But the critics aren't just sniping Republicans unhappy about being down double digits 8 days out. The public criticism is now increasingly coming from within the McCain campaign. A Lord of the Flies-esque split seems to be forming as the McCain faction and the Palin faction square off, dueling daily dispatches to the media. After Palin mentioned the flap about the $150,000 wardrobe expenditure at a rally in Tampa yesterday, a senior McCain advisor said the comments, quote, "were not the remarks we sent to her plane." Another aide described it as Palin, quote, "going rogue." Yet another said, quote, "she is a diva. She takes no advice from anyone. She does not have any relationships of trust with any of us, her family, or anyone else," end quote. Wow. Is that sexist or elitist? Just mean? Don't look at me. It's McCain campaign sources who are saying this stuff. One McCain aide told the American Spectator, quote, "Sarah Palin is a lightweight. She won't be the first, not even the third person people will think of when it comes to 2012. The only serious candidate ready to challenge to lead the Republican Party is Mitt Romney. He's in charge on November 5th. In charge on November 5th? You guys know you haven't technically lost this election yet, right? Even John McCain's Senate counterpart in Arizona, John Kyle, seems to be sort of throwing in the towel. He told the Arizona Daily Star, quote, "Unfortunately, I think John McCain might be added to that long list of Arizonans who ran for president but were never elected." Way to stay positive, Senator. Here's how bad it's gotten for Team McCain. They are getting mocked at their own rallies now. Performance art is happening around them, behind the podium. You don't believe me? How about a Sarah Palin impersonator showing up and standing right behind Senator McCain at an event yesterday in Iowa? Note the fake Palin being gracious in her acknowledgement of the applause when McCain refers to the real Sarah Palin. Check this out.
She has inspired millions of Americans with her record of reform, with her family, with the greatness and strength of her character. And thank you for your support of Sarah Palin as well. I'm very grateful for that.
A Sarah Palin impersonator mugging for the camera right over his shoulder during John McCain's speech, right behind him. Who let her stand there? Did she sleep out for tickets or something? This is funny, but mostly this is embarrassing. Among those who recognize that McCain's in dire straits but don't want to assign blame to McCain's campaign, we are hearing the argument that McCain's doing a great job. It's just that the economic crisis gave him no chance of winning this time. I don't see it that way. From the message discipline problem to the infighting to the bad advance work to the electrocute the frog leg, reflexive, unpredictable decision-making process, I'm not sure this campaign could win anything right now. I'm talking a student council election. I'm talking a fishing contest where you're the only one with a poll. Blame whoever you want, President Bush, the economy, a young, vibrant opponent. The problem is the campaign itself. As current and former campaign advisors anonymously air their grievances, one is now coming out and not trashing his former colleagues. Writing today, quote, Steve Schmidt and his colleagues have run a very good campaign and have taken McCain further than he had any reasonable right to, given the political climate. That former advisor with those kind words is Mark McKinnon, former McCain media advisor. He wrote in defense of the McCain campaign on the website The Daily Beast. Mr. McKinnon, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Your column at the Daily Beast website today criticizes what you call the McCain mutiny among Republicans. But I'm guessing that you don't see the campaign being in as dire straits as I see it in the way that I just laid it out. Do you see any reason for hope on the McCain side?
Well, it's not a pretty picture as you've just painted, but I still think we're going to have an election next Tuesday and let voters decide this race. It's not over yet. But there are some fundamental things going on here, and let me just point out that there's a question we ask on every political poll, which is, do you think the country's headed in the right direction or the wrong track? And it's a pretty good indicator of how the incumbent party is going to do. Right now, 9% of the people in this country think we're headed in the right direction. And I know your question for your viewers is, who are those 9%? But if you extrapolate that out, John McCain ought to be polling at about 9%, and yet he's made this a competitive race. And in fact, Steve Schmidt and his colleagues at the campaign took this campaign even into the convention and ahead in mid-September, and it wasn't until the economic collapse that this thing really started to widen out. Now, let me first of all say I give absolute credit to David Axelrod and Barack Obama and his entire campaign for running a really great campaign. But my point is, I know Steve Schmidt and I've worked with him. I know David Axelrod and I've worked with him. You could switch places and this race wouldn't be much different.
Is that because of the quality of the candidates and how good they are at campaigning? Is that purely because of external factors? I feel like I have to point out that if 9% is the threshold for average, you grade on a great curve in terms of what would count as McCain's success in this election.
Well, there's a physical law in politics, and it's when you win a presidential campaign, you're brilliant, and when you lose, you're an idiot. And I've been on both sides of that scale, and I don't think I'm either. But again, the Obama campaign I give them due credit for a really good campaign, but it's been a very uphill environment. This is probably the worst environment that a Republican has run in, certainly in my lifetime, and maybe ever. And yet McCain has run a strong race.
I know that it is politically impossible for this financial crisis to have worked out as an asset for the McCain campaign. But I don't think it was the coup de grace that it's being made out to be. I don't think it was inevitable to have picked a VP with no financial cred, to have made the big suspend the campaign, cancel the debate gambit, to have put out all these dueling messages for and against the bailout. I think it's not just the crisis. I think Senator McCain has kind of blown his response to the crisis. Do you disagree with that?
Listen, I'm not here to defend all the tactics or strategies of the campaign. I just think that there are fundamentals in place that make this reality what it is, and that they've made a much closer race than they have any right to be, considering the environment that he's running in.
I know that you are somebody who worked inside the campaign. You're somebody who's been very close to Senator McCain for a long time. You decided to not stay with the campaign when it became evident that Senator Obama was going to be his opponent. I wonder, from your familiarity with just the personalities and the, I guess, the experienced people involved here, if you were surprised that the knives are coming out so obviously and so viciously now before the election. I would have expected this after a loss. I am surprised that it is happening now.
Yeah, it is a concern to me, Rachel. It was one thing to see the bloody harpooning from the chattering class. What really concerns me is about the internal sort of strife that's going on right now, and that's painting a very ugly picture, and it's not a happy place there right now. But there's some solid people over there, and they've done they've done hard work and a long campaign, and it hasn't been decided yet. And McCain has been in tougher places. I remember being in a similar place just a few weeks out from New Hampshire about a year ago. So let's let the voters decide this thing.
It's a good point. I am one of these people who believes that it absolutely could still be decided. So, Mark
Democrats have found ways to throw it away before. So.
They certainly have. Mark McKinnon, it's nice to have you on the show. Thanks for being with us. I appreciate it.
Carry on. Thanks for having me.